today's show, we got Richard Stayman, a.k.a. Mavs Draft, here to talk about, what else? The draft. Where should the Mavericks look in the draft? Let's do an introduction about what the draft is going to be on today's Locked On Mavs. Let's go.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavs podcast.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can subscribe to the show and check out this nice 3-box I got going on here with our new graphics. Let us know what you think about the new graphics. Still trying stuff out, still messing with stuff. Joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, contributor at Mavs.com, the draft dude, the one more thing king. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Well, I'm not the draft dude today.
No,
because we're here with Mavs Draft.
Oh,
Richard,
let's go.
I absolutely love this time of year. Now, I will say I'm a parachute guy in. Okay, so I started a little while back doing some research. I've hit it hard over the past few weeks trying to get into the draft zone, but I really envy guys like you who follow the draft, research the draft, do all the draft stuff all year round for when people like us come parachuting in, that we can actually get insights from the experts.
Isaac wishes we were locked on NBA draft, is what he's saying.
You know, in our spare time, maybe. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. But it's a lot of work, bro. Like, is this, when you work on the draft all year, is this like the time you're like, is this like Christmas for you? You're like, all right, now's the time. Let's do this. It's my time to shine.
Yeah, yes and no. Honestly, the Christmas stuff is like the combine. I think it peaks in May for me. Now I'm just like, let's get this over with. I'm now overthinking every single thing. I've started overthinking the top three. I'm like, maybe there's somebody else that should be in the top three. And it's just too many thoughts going on. And it's hard because in the regular season, you're like, okay, it was just one game. Like, you're almost more rational in the regular season than when you have unlimited access to film nonstop.
When do you stop moving people on the big board?
Well, as a peak overthinker, the day of the draft, normal
You're
people
still moving people. Like, that's just literally like you haven't seen anything more. You're just literally moving because you decided that you thought somebody was better.
Yeah, my real stop date should be like the week before the draft because there are late withdrawal dates. I think we still have another week and a half until the next withdrawal date for international prospects, and so you kind of have to adjust at the earliest. That should be when you stop. But after that, I think just catching up on every single person, doing all the deep dives you thought, it's probably about a week before the draft.
We had you on, I guess, man, a little over a month ago, and we kind of threw some names at you. You know, obviously Dallas has the 26th pick in the draft, and at that time we're talking about some different names that we've seen different movements of. Up draft boards or down draft boards. We've had the combine, a guy like Mark Williams, we talked about on the pod a little over a month ago. We're like, man, he would, his fit in Dallas and all of this. Now, I mean, it's safe to say like Mark Williams is not going to be there at 26, right?
Yeah. I'd be shocked if he makes it past far.
Dang it, Richard.
Just dashed all his hopes and dreams. But so now we're in a spot where the Mavericks are in the 26th pick. We thought maybe it was going to be 20, 21, something like that. So a Mark Williams guy isn't there anymore. Is there anybody else over the last month or so that you've seen just start flying up draft boards where you're saying, okay, that guy may have been there 26 a month ago, but now there's no way for the Mavs to get a guy like that?
Yeah, somebody who kind of just flew past all of that, where he was like, it's too early to take him, and now he's not even going to be there. There are two Jaylin Williams, so I want to preface this. Yeah. Jaylin Williams from Santa Clara, he's going top 20. He killed it at the combine, incredible athlete, body, just measured well, and really productive at Santa Clara, really efficient all-around wing on both ends. I think he's a prime candidate to fill that role. Also, Blake Wesley, he was somebody who I thought could be had in that range. I think he's going to go just before the Mavs. I'd be really shocked if he makes it down to 26.
So then who's falling then? If those guys are rising up, who's falling?
Well, starting with Patrick Baldwin. He measured terribly. He measured fine. He performed terribly at the combine. Just jump shot hasn't ever looked that efficient since high school. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year. he went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and played for his dad in the Horizon League. Was terrible. Wasn't good in the FIBA U19s really for someone who was, labeled a great shooter. He shot 32% in the FIBAs. Not much production to back the reputation. So I think he's one of the absolute prime fallers over the last few really weeks.
It's weird because I was actually watching some of his stuff today, and spoiler alert, we're gonna have Richard on for tomorrow's pod too, talking about some like direct prospects. And he was one of the guys I was gonna throw at you because he's kind of like a mystery to me, of hyped up a lot in high school, like you said, goes plays for his dad. I actually like his jump shot, or at least like the form of it and the high release point of it. But then he doesn't shoot it that well, but he's 6'9", he's 19. And I just didn't know what to do with him because, I'm reading some of the combine stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, he didn't do well. And then he plays at, the smaller school type thing. And I don't know. I just didn't know what to do with a guy like that. But then you see the hype over Jaylin Williams from Santa Clara coming out of the combine. And it's like, oh, man, let's go. Why was he overlooked in the first place? And now I guess, he's probably not going to be there for Dallas at 26.
Yeah, and Patrick Baldwin's probably one good first-round fit is Dallas because, let's be real, who could turn an overhyped shooter into an actually efficient shooter better than Luka Doncic in the league?
Wow. Shots.
At who?
I guess all the Mavs shooters that they have.
You mentioned Jaylin Williams, Santa Clara Jaylin Williams, which ironically, I really like the other Jaylin Williams too from Arkansas, and I've been looking at some of his stuff especially for the Mavs. Late first, a big 6'10", I think 7'1" wingspan. That Jaylin Williams. So both Jaylin Williams, I actually like both of them. But for just say the combine, Jaylin Williams seems like the darling coming out of that. But who are there any other names that you're saying, hey, after the combine, this is what I'm hearing about them, or they measured well, performed well, or like they're a hot name?
Yeah, there's definitely been some other risers. Like you said, I love Jaylin Williams from Arkansas. I think he might even qualify as somebody. And if I'm not mistaken, our past history suggests that he'll be good because we both loved Donovan Mitchell in 2017. And I think one person is good enough sample size to believe something like that. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard otherwise. I think another guy who's risen he's obviously not in the Mavs range, but Dyson Daniels is somebody who and I mentioned him because what he does, where he goes, is going to have a huge domino effect on the rest of the draft. He's going to go a little bit over slotted. I think I personally would not take him with a top 7-8 pick. He's going to take him with a top 7 or 8 pick. And because of that, somebody is going to fall into place in Dallas's lap just because everybody, like I said, those dominoes just fall into place from reaches. They have a big ripple effect.
If you had to name like one top 20 guy that would fall to the Mavericks or that would fall to the Mavericks range for whatever reason, is there a guy that stands out to you?
Man, I have two guys that really do stick out. One is ridiculously bold, and I know it goes completely against the grain, but Tari Eason from LSU.
That would be extreme.
I've heard he has some motor left-hand basketball IQ issues that have been exposed in workouts. We'll see how true that stuff is.
Is that 3 different things? Motor, left-hand, basketball IQ? That's 3, or is that one thing that I don't know what it is?
No, those are 3 different areas. I would say motor and basketball IQ can go together.
His motor's really good to his right, but his motor's awful to his left.
Richard, are you creating archetypes over there? You should, if you're creating like new positions, you should write a book about it.
He goes into the astral plane.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the best idea I've heard all day. But no, the other one is probably Ty Washington. He's an interesting one because would you take another combo point guard he's out of Kentucky. You could redeem the Tyrese Maxey miss in 2020, but I don't think he's at all the same player. He's an interesting one to gamble on because before his injury against Auburn, he was a really good player, probably top 10 for me ever since he's fallen out of my top 20.
I remember I was texting Scott Tomlin earlier in the year. A lot of podcast listeners know, director PR for the Mavs and Kentucky guy. And I remember texting about Ty. I'm like, dude, he's balling out right now. And then obviously he got hurt, and it felt like he wasn't the same player like you were talking about. But still, I mean, he could get drafted late in the first or second half of the first round and be one of those dudes that we look at, you know, a year or so from now and be like, why did he go, 22 in the draft? And it's like, well, I don't know.
Coming up, let's get into a couple of the big men that the Mavericks could possibly take with the 26th pick. And are there any teams we think could trade back in the draft that the Mavs should maybe be looking at trading up with? We're doing the ultimate mock draft and talking about our own trades, so we'll talk about that with Richard coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to get all the parts that you need and just to keep them in stock. So you go there, you drive all the way there, you take yourself there, and you're like, hey, give me this part. And they're like, oh, we got to order it on the computer and it'll come here. You might as well just order it yourself, because you're just going to get it yourself and leave yourself. So get it yourself, get it delivered to your front door. rockauto.com prices are always reliably low for every single customer as well. They have everything you can need. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solutions for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. They know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. It's rockauto.com. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen now. We have an important favor to ask you. We've been putting together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and what you don't like about Locked On. Be nice.
Oh, this is good.
LockedOnPodcasts.com/survey. LockedOnPodcasts.com/survey. And if you finish the survey, you'll be entered in a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. You can go see the Mavs next year. Go see a college basketball game if you're a crazy person like Richard. LockedOnPodcast.com/survey. All right, Isaac Harris, we are here with Richard Stayman, a.k.a. Mavs Draft, one of the hosts of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. The logo's right in the corner there. Look at that. Listen to that show for all great stuff on the NBA Draft. Richard, the Mavericks need a big. Nico Harrison came out at exit interviews and said, we got to upgrade at big man. Is there anybody in that 20 to 30 range that could be there for the Mavericks that stands out to you as a big man that could help the Mavericks?
Yeah, let's start with Isaac and my guy, Jaylin Williams from Arkansas, 6'10", power forward, 7'1" wingspan, good athlete, not great athlete, pretty much a below the rim player, doesn't block shots at the rim, doesn't meet players at the apex, on dunks, doesn't finish in traffic above the rim, but great touch on his layups, good passer, potential to shoot the ball, really just a great connecting piece. And ultimately, I think this is the most important thing is he can guard the perimeter. I don't know about you guys, but I think Maxi's a great defender, but I think he's best guarding 2-point shots. Jaylin Williams can guard 3-point shots, and to me, that's a big difference maker.
Yeah, I like his motor a lot. He obviously played on the Arkansas team that made a little run there in March. But yeah, I don't know. I like him. Honestly, the first guy who put me on him was Jonathan Tjarks, and we were actually texting a little bit about him today, and he's like, "You need to dive into some more of his tape." And he's, I think you'd like him. And once I did this evening, I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." And it's like, I don't watch a ton of Arkansas basketball, but just going back and watching him, and I remember a little bit, obviously in the tournament and stuff, and yeah, I like him. Like you said, I mean, he was all defense in the SEC, 7'1" wingspan. He passes the ball, I think, really well. And I was reading some today, and draft promises, obviously those reports just come out here left and right. But I did read something today to where there was a rumor that he has a draft promise there in the back half of the first round, and I'm like, okay.
Back half of the first round?
It wasn't back half. It was like into first round. So yeah, it's like into first round.
Could it be the Mavericks?
I think he would do well in Dallas.
Some would say Arkansas is in Dallas's backyard, so
that is only TCU. So
Jaylin Williams is one that's a good one. Is there anyone else? Any other bigs in that range that the Mavs could look at?
Well, I guess if being in the backyard that would probably eliminates him. So not him. I would go with Ismail Kamagate. He's somebody I brought up the last time I was on here. Still the same old reporting. I love his game. Big fan of his ability to defend the perimeter, can finish above the rim, great athlete, incredible defensive range. He's at the free throw line. He's still blocking the shot at the rim while the guy's about catching the ball under the rim. Just love his upside. You also look at the mid-range shooting. I think he has some potential there. He's been doing that occasionally this year. Free throw percentage doesn't really indicate 3-point shooting, but You look at a big man who can defend multiple positions, hold his own against guards on drives, and potentially shoot a mid-range shot and be a pick and roll man threat. That's a high upside player for the Mavs that could impact winning next year.
We're going to talk about this big. Oh, go ahead about it.
No, I was just going to ask on an international, keeping kind of on that. We obviously have a lot of international listeners on the pod. Slovenia, we've obviously been celebrating, 5 years doing the pod and all of that. And one of the things my wife actually mentioned as she listened to our pod, she's like, hey, you should have mentioned how many countries, listen to the pod. My wife being from Brazil, we have, a lot of Brazilian listeners. So tudo bem, shout out to them. But in the international prospects of this draft, obviously we hear about Jovic. Did I say that right? What other guys there in like the mid first round, late first round international prospects that are you keeping an eye on, especially from a Mavs angle?
Yeah, there's somebody who I need to do more research in myself. He's one of the very last players I need to dive into, but Rafael Barlow is a huge fan of this player, and that's Gabriel Procida from Italy. He is,
I have no clue who this is.
You do or don't?
I don't at all.
Perfect. The summary with him, there's a similar player to him, I would say, in Bryce McGowan's, who's from the States. He's at Nebraska. I like Gabriel Procida. He's a guy who he could be a complete offensive player, just 3-level scoring, some playmaking. I really like his abilities, and he's around 6'6", I believe. I should have had that pulled up before, but he has great size for the wing. I know he has good length. He's 6'7", correction. So you look at somebody who, if you're looking for that complete offensive upside, Gabriel Procida is a really sneaky pick. He's gotten first round buzz, and the Mavs are right in that range where buzz is enough to say it might be them in the mix.
Yeah. Cool.
We were talking about big men, and the one that I was going to bring up is a guy that's in the Mavs range, is Walker Kessler, and I know it's a guy that you're completely against. Give me the pros and the cons.
Yeah, so I'll end with the pros because I want to end on a positive note. So the issues I have with Walker Kessler is he's a really good college player, don't get me wrong, but I worry because he can't guard the perimeter at all. He looks very, very stiff. Anytime somebody goes on a drive against him, he's going for the block. He doesn't have, how can I impact this play? How can I stop the drive? It's how can I block this shot? And that mentality really worries me. You look at foul trouble, you look at just simply getting beat. And then on offense, I don't know what he does outside of, finishing a couple lobs. He's not very athletic. In theory can shoot, but I don't buy it at all. He has a high release. It looks very awkward. Now for the pros, he's one of the best shot blockers in a single season ever.
I was gonna say ever, right? I think it's like block rate or something's like insane.
Historic block rate, exactly. Part of that goes back to that root though of he hunts a lot of blocks. So to me, it's not as practical in the NBA as it was in college. Also, he camped out in the paint a ton. Guys could try and storm in and dunk on a 7'1" guy or something, or attack him, finish around him. It's not going to work in the NBA when he has to move around some.
You watch a ton of NBA basketball too, right? Like I see you tweeting all the time about NBA. You watch the Magic for some reason, and you watch the Mavs, obviously. The Mavs need a big man that can come in and help them right now. What have we seen from some younger guys, rookies, maybe sophomores in the NBA that are the Mavericks, if they draft somebody, like they draft the Koloko guy, or they draft Ishmael, or one of these other guys that you were talking about, is that somebody we could realistically expect to come in and help like right away? Or is it most big men usually like a project in the NBA, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of big men are projects. I think Kamagate, unfortunately, falls closer to the project than immediate impact. I think almost Koloko, too. He's an interesting one because I don't know what to make of him. He had 2 years under Sean Miller being horribly misused, and then he broke out as a junior. Generally, the breakouts as an upperclassman can be a little bit of fool's gold. Historically. So I worry a little bit about that, but at the same time, he also moves well on the perimeter, has those physical tools, potential as a jump shooter. I'd gamble on Koloko being more useful year one, despite Kamagate being in a pro league now. I think he's got more useful, beneficial tools, knowing how to play within himself right now.
Interesting.
How do you, I know we only have you for a little bit longer for today, as you're going to join us back for tomorrow's pod, but just last thoughts on the top of the draft right now. Obviously, Mavs are not up there, but how are you feeling? I mean, this is June, so we only have a few weeks left. How are you feeling about Chet, Jabari, Paolo, just the whole order up there at the top?
It's a mess. That is where my peak overthinking has come in, because I've started realizing, like, I've had some issues with Paolo's passing. I know he's an advanced passer, but at the same time, he can't make like a post-entry pass, right? You couldn't, if you look at his turnovers, I would gamble a quarter to almost half of his turnovers came from terrible entry passes that Mark Williams, who has a 9 foot, like 9 standing reach or something, that it was too high for him. And it's like, okay, if you can't throw to him, I get it's just a post-entry pass, but it's those fundamentals of mistake-free, like just staying focused, being like, just make the right play.
Donovan Mitchell's like, I got you, bro.
Yeah. And so like that kind of worries me. And then I bought all into Chet. I think if all three of those guys hit, Chet is the best player. There's nobody like him. You just look at got big men at 7 feet who can pass, block, and score. It's an unreal combination. So I'm all in on him. And Jabari, of course, is just one of the safest picks, I think, for teams looking to rebuild in 2023 as well and not be winning next year and build those cornerstones, because next year is a lot more superstar power. Jabari complements those guys a lot better.
There you go. There's Richard Stayman with us today. We'll talk to him tomorrow about some specific players in the draft. We'll bring Isaac and I will each bring 5 prospects for him to talk about that the Mavs could target. So we'll talk about that. Now we have a special treat for you guys. Host of Locked On Sports Today, Peter Bukowski, sat down with Big Shot Bob, Robert Horry, talk about the NBA Finals. So enjoy that. Hear Robert Horry talk all about the NBA Finals. Thanks to our friends at BetOnline. Here is that coming up after we talk about BetOnline. BetOnline is the best place to check out the odds and lines in sports. There's so much stuff to see on BetOnline. They have the NBA Finals odds. Right now, the Warriors are still a favorite, 3.5-point favorite in Game 1 over the Boston Celtics. They have a couple of draft odds, since that's what we're talking about today. Richard, Jabari Smith, still the favorite, minus 250 to be the number 1 pick. Chet, plus 190. Paolo dropped all the way to plus 900. Is Paolo for the number 1 pick? Is there any like feeling that he could just jump up and surprise anybody there?
Yeah, it depends who you ask. Rafael Barlow, who is all in on, he's been reporting, Jabari is going number 1. And whereas the Locked On Magicos, Philip Rossman Reich, I might have said it backwards, but the Locked On Magicos thinks Paolo is the pick. So, it's tough. It's tough. It depends on who you ask. I don't think any 3 people have the same answer. Yeah,
and so if you want to hedge your bets a little bit, put a little bit of money on Paolo, and you can win big if he goes number 1. So go check it out on BetOnline. Check out all the trends and actions. It's BetOnline, where the game starts.
The Golden State Warriors are minus 150, the favorites in the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics. Joining me now, Robert Horry, 7-time NBA champion, is here courtesy of BetOnline. Check out BetOnline for all the up-to-date lines on the NBA Finals, Finals MVP, Finals props, and each and every game line. This is great to have you here. Why do you think, because the line has moved a little bit in the Celtics' favor, why do you think there are people that like the Celtics matchup against the Warriors?
Because the smart people know defense wins championships. And if you look at the Celtics team, they got 2 players on that team that made the all defensive team. Smart, of course, defensive player of the year, but Robert Williams is one of those guys that is an eraser. He can block shots. He can, he can erase a lot of mistakes that you make on the perimeter. And you think about, you got Brown, Tatum, and Smart, who can get up on people defensively and funnel them to that guy. Next thing you know, it's getting blocked. And if you look at the way, Hartford has been playing, he's turned back the hands of time. He's blocking shots again. So overall, I think that the Celtics is a better defensive team than the Warriors, because even though you have Draymond Green, Klay Thompson is not the Klay Thompson of old who can do the things he used to be able to do. And so I just think that's a big key for them, for the Celtics, that is.
How do you see Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart matching up with Steph Curry? Is that going to be something where you see that Marcus is going to pick him up 94 feet? Like, how do you think Smart is going to approach that assignment if he does get that assignment, which we assume he's going to?
But you know what? I don't think it's going to be a one-man job. If you look at the Celtics, they 1, 2, 3 are all athletic guys, and you go to the 2, Jaylin, and go to the Tatum, they get taller. It's like the bars on a cell phone. And I think even though they like to do a lot of switching, I think they're perfect for this matchup. It's a perfect matchup for the Celtics, and when they got to guard them, because Klay is going to be constantly moving. And so sort of, not the same as a Jimmy Butler or Tyler Hero, but I think what they just did against the Heat is like a prelude to what they're going to do. And so I think they're going to be fine defensively, switching and getting ready for Steph.
It sounds like you like the Celtics in this one.
All my Laker fans are going to be mad at me because they say you cannot wear anything green and you can never root for the Celtics. I'm not rooting for the Celtics. I would like to see my former teammate, Ime Udoka, win his first championship, so I would like for that to happen. But, I just think being the basketball mindset, I just think that there's a good chance the Celtics could win this thing.
All right, so we have some odds here. Celtics in 6 is plus 375. Celtics in 7 is plus 650. If people are going to bet on it, what is your prediction? If you like Boston, 6, 7?
Hey, you know what? If you're trying to make some money, right? that's why you gamble. And so I would go with the Celtics in 7 because I think the Celtics have been a battle-tested team on the road. They've won a lot of games on the road. They just won the Eastern Conference on the road. And so I think they're ready. Not saying everybody will say, well, the Heat is a different monster than, the Warriors and blah, blah, blah. But I still think it all boils down to having confidence and playing well on the road and believing that you can win on the road.
There's also been this discussion now, especially among Celtics fans, about what this Celtics team has had to face, particularly Jason Tatum has had to face. Kevin Durant in the first round, Giannis Antetokounmpo in the second round, Jimmy Butler on a heater, no pun intended, for Miami, and now Steph Curry. You're talking about at least 3 pantheon guys who are all-time great players. Who do you think has the most on the line legacy-wise in this series? For whom would that one title, you won 7, who would that one title mean the most for?
I'm going to go off script a little bit, and I'm going to stop people from thinking this is going to be the greatest run ever by the Celtics. That's not true, because you got Hornacek, Karl Malone, you got Kevin Johnson, Charles Barkley, you got Dennis Rodman, MVP, David Robinson, and you got Shaquille and Penny. Now that is the greatest run back in '95. So when people say this might be the greatest run, stop it. You know what I'm saying? Because all these teams was 55, 50 plus win teams. And so I just think if you look at this game and you have to pick an MVP, of course it's going to be Tatum. But this run that the Celtics are on is incredible. Don't get me wrong, because they've been able to win on the road, which is key because you have to win on the road in order to win championships. That's unless you have home court advantage and you protect your home court. But I just think overall, when you look at the makeup of these two teams, they're similar. Golden State Warriors, they were the Celtics 6-7 years ago when they first entered the playoffs. And nobody thought they could win a championship. Next thing you know, they win a championship. Then the following season, they win all these games and don't win a championship. And then they get KD, then they win 2 more. But I think if you look at the Celtics, there are so many similarities with these teams that people are always going to say, oh, let's go with the veteran leadership. Let's go with the fan favorite and Steph. Let's think about it, because everybody wants Steph to win because we know he got robbed one time with the MVP in the finals, and then he took a step back and let KD come in to his team, which is Steph's team, and take 2 MVPs. And so I do think Steph has a lot to prove, and his legacy is on the line when it comes to this because, all the chatter now is about him not having a MVP in the finals, which we all know he was robbed and won. So let's be real about that.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at these MVP odds as you're talking about the MVP, and we expect Curry and Tatum right at the top in terms of the odds. You're not getting really good value there. I'm looking at Jaylen Brown 10-1. Yeah. I'm looking at Draymond 22-1. Like if he really turned it up defensively, people forget in that game 7 against the Cavs, he had a triple-double in that game. He was the best Warrior on the floor in that game. I'm looking at Marcus Smart at 40-1. It seems like you can get some good value. And we've seen, including in this Warriors run, that it's not always the stars who win these finals MVPs.
It's true. For me, if I wanted to take the odds, I'm going to eliminate the top 3 automatically. And I don't think Clay is, Clay is a game 5, game 6 type of player. But me, I would go with Andrew Wiggins. If I had to pick someone with the odds, I would go with Andrew Wiggins, who is 20-1. And think about it. He has started to come into his own.
Yep.
After that dunk on Luka, all of a sudden this dude is smiling big. He's enthusiastic. He's playing hard, and he's an all-star. I think some people forget he was an all-star. I think this is a good way, in the biggest stage, to show everybody that the all-star committee didn't make a mistake. So if I had to take because I don't think Draymond Green, he doesn't shoot enough, and he's gonna have to guard too many people, so he's gonna be all over the board. So if you look down that list of people and you want to say odds maker, for me, I would take Andrew Wiggins 20-1.
That is, that's bold. I love it. I think you're right that he seems to be a different player. Just in the Warriors, just in Golden State, he seems to have been unlocked a little bit, whether that's Steve Kerr, whether that's just him feeling more comfortable. We're talking about legacy. And you have been on some teams that have gone on these multi-year runs that have been what we might consider dynastic, right? There have been some discussions here. If the Warriors win one, that because it's the Clay, Steph, Draymond core with Steve Kerr, that this has to be considered part of the Warriors run and that we have to call them a dynastic team. Where do you fall on that discussion? If they win one, are they a dynasty?
You know what? I will put them in that category as a dynasty. Because they was riddled with injuries,
right?
2 years, Clay was out, then Steph went out. You say, okay, we'll give them a Phil Jackson asterisk by those 2 years. But if they're able to get back to the mountaintop and win this year, I would put them, you got one more step to be a dynasty. And then if they go to the finals again, then I would give them a dynasty. But, think about this. They gave us a dynasty in the Lakers. We won 3 in a row. And next thing they dismantle a team, they go back and lose. It's considered a dynasty. So, to me, there's only been, 3 dynasties in this: Bulls, the Celtics, and the Lakers, because they're in a situation where they went 6+ championships. That's what you look at. But in this day, in this era, you can give them a dynasty.
I think I would consider the Spurs, the Tim Duncan, Greg Popovich Spurs in that mix, but they never won back-to-back titles. And so it depends on how you want to qualify it. Sustained success, not always enough. I think if you're a Boston fan, you're going, why can't we have that sustained run? We've got these 2 young superstars, Marcus Smart, defensive player of the year, who's coming into his own a little bit defensively. It seems like they've unlocked some things with him as their pure point guard in initiating offense because he doesn't have to create for everyone. They've got Tatum and Brown who can create for themselves. I mean, what do you think the chances are that they could be not the next dynasty, but the next team that you have to deal with in the Eastern Conference? Like, okay, they're going to be there every year until further notice.
I think you look down that line and you says, okay, Tatum, first team, max. Brown, max. Smart, max. These are super max contracts these guys potentially can get. So now since I cover the Lakers got $40 million guys, $40 million guys. They can't get nobody else on the team unless they do some hell of a drafting, and they get those guys that's going to be there. But it boils down to payday, man. If you're going to stick around and get paid, or you're going to have that one falter and say, we didn't win a championship, we need to make a move because, they exploited us in this area. We need to get someone in, and they trade one of those guys. People do dumb things like that. Well, GMs, I should say. So I think they have the potential to make a long run. They're just going to have to stick together and do what a Tim Duncan would do and say, I'm going to take less money so you can sign a Tony Parker, you sign a Manu Ginobili. But are these guys now, selfless enough where they say, hey, you know what? I don't want to make $40 million. I'll make $30 million. I don't think so. I think every guy now is trying to get their bag so they can say, you know what? At one point in my career, I was making 50, 40 million, whatever it may be. So that's going to be the key though. It boils down to money if they can keep that team together.
All right. Not a finals question, but I can't talk to Big Shot Bob and not ask you this question. Which of your big shots is your favorite?
I grew up a Lakers fan, a huge Magic Johnson fan. And one of my biggest thrills before I even made to the NBA, I got to play one-on-one with Magic when I was being scouted by the Lakers coming out of college, coming out of University of Alabama. So the shot I made against the Sacramento Kings in 2001 to win that game is probably my favorite. And don't get me wrong, I love what I did in Houston. I love what I did in San Antonio. But everything I did in San Antonio was on the road, Game 5 on the road. But this was at home in Staples Center. And the ego comes into play where you want to hear that crowd chant your name, man. And you run off the court and the crowd's still chanting your name. You in the locker room, you can still hear them chanting your name. So I think that shot, it takes over all the other shots just for the ego. You know, we all as athletes got some type of ego. And I think for me, that just takes over because